I think everything is actually ready to start, to jump in. Once again, I'd like to welcome you. Nice to see you. I can't really see you, but I'm happy that you can see and hear me. So welcome to this webinar, HR Storytelling Guide, How to Win Over the Board. And I'm going to start with a question. So try to answer it. Have you ever shared some HR data with a manager or a CEO and seen their eyes glaze over, like here in the picture? You had the feeling that something is right. You had some numbers to support, but you didn't have the impact. Well, if your answer is yes, you are in the right place right now, because today, right now, you are going to learn a bit more about how to turn HR metrics into compelling stories that speak the language of business and may influence decisions at the top. If you don't know me yet, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Iwona, and I'm a business English teacher conducting lessons for co-action business language trainer. I'm also intercultural communication trainer, and I conduct workshops on communication in English. And I have worked with HR leaders across industries, helping them communicate HR's values clearly and persuasively. This webinar is organized by Co-Action Business Language Trainer, an educational institution that helps business leaders, and not only leaders, different people speak like a pro. Okay, so shall we jump into the agenda right now? So the title is HR Storytelling Guide, How to Win Over the Board. So first, we will look at some basics. I'm going to tell you something about storytelling, why it is so influential and how to start. Then we will move on to changing a simple sentence about retention rates into a story. Next, there will be time to look at some metrics, reports, and also we will try to change some of them into stories that can influence people that you talk to. Later, I will show you some impact techniques that you can use to even make your story stronger. Finally, if you stay with me till the end, there will be a surprise for you. Are you ready? I hope you are. Let's start. So I have said some things about me, and I'd like to know you a bit better. I'll explain later why it is important to get to know your audience better. Now you can see a QR code on your screen. If you scan it, you will be directed to Menti. And you can answer the questions that you can see there. There are 3 questions. The first one is about your role. The second is about the industry you're coming from. And the third one is about the challenge that you're struggling with maybe right now, or you're just facing regarding your English, regarding your language. If you can't scan the QR code, you can enter the website www.menti.com. The code you need to enter is 89352637, and you will see exactly the same thing as you will if you scan the QR code. So just remember 3 questions, and there are 3 possible fields to enter, 3 fields to enter your answer. You can enter 1 and then you can just move on to the next question. It's okay to enter just 1. So I can see that some answers are appearing. That's great. Thank you very much for this. Once you submit all 3 answers, you also will be able to see the cloud with the answers. So you will know who you are here with today. So thank you very much for all the answers. Knowing your audience, I will mention it later as well, helps adjust the language and the message. And regarding the challenge, it helps to highlight the aspects that are important for your audience. Okay. I think we are already done with it, so I think we can move on. Thank you very much. So, as mentioned in the agenda, we will start with some theory, let's call it like that, some theories connected with storytelling. So I will say that we will look at three different aspects of storytelling. The first one is connected with the fact how it can be used. Another, how it affects us, and the third, how to prepare. Firstly, let me use Netflix to picture the idea of telling story to steal people's attention. So I think if you don't know Netflix's former CEO, I think he's former, you can find him online. He is a really great storyteller indeed, and he took part in some TED conferences as well, where he told stories. You can listen to his stories, and it can be definitely inspirational. But I'm not going to talk about him today, because I'd like to draw your attention to Netflix's dashboard. They have all the data in the world. They collect the data about what we watch, when we pause, what we binge on. And they could throw just numbers at us, but they use the data actually to tell us stories about us. So they say top 10 this week, or because you watch this, you might be interested in that, or trending now, okay? And you just go through the little squares and you check and you are involved. So these micro stories guide us, make us feel understood, and keep us engaged in watching Netflix. That's exactly what we need to do in HR. Use the data that you collect to tell stories that guide decision makers and help them act. Think about it right now. Are your HR dashboards more like a spreadsheet with data, or more like a Netflix recommendation screen? Yeah, trending now, retention rates. Think about it, okay? Now, another aspect I'd like to talk about is how storytelling influences the brain and how different it is from raw data. When we share raw data, we activate just the language processing parts of the brain. But when we tell a story, something with context, characters, emotions, several parts light up. Sensory part as well, motor and emotional. The brain actually starts to experience what's being said, not just process it. Think about how you read a book, okay? It's more or less the same. So that's why people forget statistics, but they remember stories. So ask yourself, okay, the question I'm going to ask: have you ever read a business report that moved you? Probably not, but have you read a story about a struggling team or a top performer leaving the team? That stays with you, doesn't it? Okay, now, the last but not least thing about storytelling. remember to learn who your audience is. Storytelling only works if you know who you're talking to. A CFO wants numbers and impact. A marketing lead might care more about people and energy in the story. So before you tell your story, ask yourself, what's their pain point? What do they value? What do they fear? So if you tailor your narrative to the person, not just the message, you've already won half the battle, trust me. So right now, let's take 10 seconds and answer the question. Who do you usually talk to about HR data, and what do they care about? Once you answer the question, remember it, and whenever we are going to have exercises to change some sentences into stories, try to think about your audience and if the message that you see on the screen is going to be the same. Okay? Thanks. Shall we move on to the next point in our agenda? Retention rates. Okay, so let's start. We're going to practice right now, and retention rates are going to be our first example. So the sentence that you can see on the screen, I can read it. Our current annual retention rate is 85%, which means that 15% of our employees are leaving the company each year. Typical sentence, you can hear or say it even yourself, but does it stay? Like, okay, like there are like numbers, facts, but does it resonate with you or anyone? Maybe not, we will see. We will try to build a story based on this sentence, okay? So how to build a story? There are some things that we need to start with before we build the story, okay? So there are going to be 6 stages we are going to look at, okay? So you can change this sentence into a story, but you need to follow the procedure, okay? So the first stage is to set the scene. Start with setting the scene. Okay, in next slides, you're going to see how we can do it, but just remember, set the scene, then you need to create in story, a drama is important. So then you need to create a drama. At the same time, you need to here and there involve your audience somehow. Also, you need to establish credibility or the numbers credibility, but it's good, okay, to back up what you're saying, what you're talking about. When you want to finish the story, you need to signal it, okay? It's also quite important, and then it's very important to finish with a punchline. Okay, so 6 stages, okay? Setting the scene, creating a drama, involving the audience, establishing credibility, signaling the end of the story, delivering the punchline. Okay, let's now try to change this sentence. Remember it. Our current annual retention rate is 85%, which means that 15% of our employees are leaving the company each year. We're going to try to change this specific sentence into a story. Shall we start? Okay, so this is how we can set the scene. Okay, so last year, I was talking to an HR manager from a tech company that was constantly recruiting. Every single month, they had to hire around 10 new people, rewrite job descriptions, screen hundreds of CVs, arrange interviews, and onboard replacements. You would say that they are growing, wouldn't you? This is how we can set the scene, okay? So not like we are going to talk about retention rates, how many people leave, how many people stay, but that's not enough. There must be something behind it. It sounds okay, but don't you think this can be better? Conferences and different meetings are just a regular part of our lives, aren't they? So last year, there was this HR meetup focused on technology. The venue is absolutely stunning, I'm telling you. A good place to organize a company meeting. Anyway, while mingling with some interesting people, I happened to bump into Susie, a really nice woman from this tech company. And you won't believe what she tells me. They need to hire around 10 people every single month. I think their business is booming. And I say, wow, you must be expanding your services really fast. And you know what she replies? Don't you think it's a bit better? Well, yeah. The first one is rather traditional way to set the scene. It's okay, yes, but the second is just a bit better, and you can see some phrases in bold, and I'm going to tell you what the phrases mean and why it might be better to use the second approach than the first one. Are you ready? Okay, so this is one example. Conferences and different meetings are just a regular part of our lives, aren't they? So what is in bold? Do you know this? It's called, it's a question tag. It's a question tag. And when do we use question tags? So we use question tags in different situations, but when you tell a story, a question tag is there to relate to your audience, okay? To shorten the distance between you and your audience. So I totally encourage you to use question tags whenever it's possible. Of course, not with every sentence, that would be a bit too much, but here and there, it's a really good strategy to involve with your audience, okay? The venue is absolutely stunning. How do we call this, like in bold? Do you know? I'm talking about the name of the words. These are like absolutely is an adverb. Stunning is an adjective. You don't have to remember this. What you need to remember is it's that they like each other and they actually create this vivid and sophisticated language of the story. If you put like adverb plus adjective collocation here and there, that's also something that will influence your audience, okay? I'm telling you, you won't believe, okay? That's another way of involving your audience. So in story, what is important is like engaging people, yes, making them feel. And like if you see like someone's eyes glazing over, then you can say, oh, I'm telling you, well, you won't believe. It's like, like these sentences are like touching people, okay? So I encourage you to use them as well. Now, what we can see here, as opposed to the first story, is a present tense, okay? The first traditional way was using past tenses. And actually, both approaches are fine. It's up to you which approach you choose. I prefer present tenses, and all the stories that we are going to look at today are in the present tenses. And there are two reasons why I did it. The first thing is that it's easier. It's just easier to say because you don't have to think about all the past forms. Another thing that is good when you use present tenses is that you involve your audience straight away. They feel that they are there. it creates this dynamic environment, okay? They are in the story when you use present tenses. It's up to you which one you choose. I heard actually, my daughter likes reading a lot of stories, a lot of books, and she told me about a book that was written in the present tense only. And she said she found it quite strange. It was difficult for her to follow the story. So it's really up to you. If you are used to past tenses, then it's okay. You can use past tenses, but I can see that it's really changing and present tenses can appear even in books these days. Okay? So let's move on. Let's look at another thing that you can use in your approach, in your stories. Wow, you must be expanding your services really fast. So what is it? It's a direct speech as opposed to indirect or reported speech. When you report, you again have to think about the construction, how to report someone's words. I will tell you briefly that in English you have to change the tense, okay? So again, it's easier and more dynamic at the same time to use direct speech, quotations, okay? So just say exactly what people said, okay? So one more thing that you can't see here, but was in the story is like, again, vivid language. I don't know if you remember, there was like this expression, I happened to bump into Susie, and I like while mingling with people. So it's also good to use this language of movement, okay? So the vivid language, so that they feel that you act, you know, like you remember, I will refer to what I said about storytelling. To activate different parts of your brain, it's good to use a language that will be some kind like of like emotional and physical. So like mingling with people, happen to bump. This is like when you activate different parts of people's brain. Okay, so we stopped for a moment. We have the beginning of the story. We set the scene, okay? Shall we move on to the drama? That's the next stage. So how can you create a drama here? Do you have any ideas? What do you think? This is my suggestion, okay? So we finished the story with, and you know what she replies? So we can continue. She just sighs and says, we need to bring in around 10 new people just to replace those who leave. Quietly, over time, they are losing key talent. It's called a brain drain. Teams are stretched. Managers aren't focused on growth anymore. Just making it to the end of the month feels like a win. Okay, so this is creating the drama. It's not that they are hiring new people because they are growing. No, people leave and they need to replace them. Okay. So take a look at it. And you can see again, I use present tense, direct speech, yes. So some vivid language, maybe idiom is a good idea, brain drain as well. Yes, teams are stretched. So this is good, the language. You need to concentrate on the language to influence people who you tell stories to. Now, what's the next stage? Do you remember? Involving the audience. And like we can involve the audience here and there with question tags. I mentioned that, and with other things, but we can treat it also as a separate stage where we actually want to really influence the person we are talking to. So let me read the example. Sound familiar? What happens to our business when 15 out of every 100 employees walk away each year? How much time does it take to replace them? How much energy? which we can dedicate to boosting morale, which is in long term much more efficient. What kind of impact does that have on our results, our culture, our momentum? This part should be adjusted to your audience very, very much. So if you want to involve your audience or treat involving the audience as a separate stage part of your story, then it's good to think what will influence your audience the most, okay? Numbers, energy, lost opportunities. Think about it, and it's good to ask questions. I'm going to talk about it during impact techniques. That's a good, really good impact technique, but it's good to ask questions, okay? Here, especially. Do you remember the next stage? Establishing credibility. How can we establish credibility? There are different ways. Let's just look at the example here. We see the same pattern in our own data. I have checked that twice, and I have talked to managers. Our current retention rate is 85%. On paper, that sounds acceptable, but in reality, it means 15% of our people are leaving along with their expertise, their client connections, and the stability they bring to their teams. Credibility. Where can you see credibility here? I have checked that twice. That's credibility. Okay. I have talked to managers. Okay. On paper. So these are all things that relate to credibility, where you prove your point somehow. Can you think of any other ways to establish credibility? You can relate to some documents, to some like articles that you read, research. You can just talk about research here right now as well. Okay, so there can be different aspects of establishing credibility. Just remember that when you talk to C-level people, it's important. It's important to underline that it's not something you are making up. It's real. Okay. So we are almost there. Yes. We are now signaling the end of the story. So it's like slowly summarizing, wrapping up. And this is my suggestion for the retention rate. Are we doomed to constant recruitment then? Maybe not. So what does the tech company do? You might want to know. They stop relying on exit interviews. They start investing in internal mobility, clearer development paths, and regular honest feedback loops. They focus on listening before people reach the door. So here in signaling the end, you have actually some kind of solution to the drama you created. So this is actually a good way to signal the end of the story when you talk about some metrics and you are expecting a change. Yes? Okay. And the punchline. What kind of punchline we might have here? What's the punchline? Any ideas? Let's just look. A year later, they boost their retention rate by 6% and cut hiring costs by nearly 30%. Why? Because when you treat retention not just as a number on a report or in KPIs, but as a real business priority, it pays off. So you conclude here, because we started telling this company's story, we conclude with their success. Okay, so we can call this a success story. Okay, it doesn't have to be a success story, you know. It depends what your audience will be influenced by and what is important for your audience. So choose. That's why it's good to know your audience, and then you need to choose the story. But you can still follow the procedure. setting the scene, creating drama, involving your audience, establishing credibility, signaling the end of the story, and then delivering the punchline at the end. Okay, so let's just summarize, okay, what we have said so far about creating a story, and we will practice again with something else, okay? So start with a real life moment that your audience can visualize. That's very like an anchor. You just like start. Foundation, we can call it as well. Then it's good to build drama around the business problem. Okay. Then you engage your audience. You try to reflect. And at the end, in the punchline, my tips. Remember to include relatable roles and situations. Don't make them abstract. When you are talking, when you work in this tech industry, relate to some kind of tech company, okay? So it's important for C-level people. Add small but vivid details, not too many details, okay? It shouldn't be too complicated or too long, but like mingling with people, bumping into Susie, like small vivid details, okay? It actually helps to activate different parts of the brain. Use direct speech and present tenses if possible, and if you feel comfortable with it, okay? It creates this dynamic atmosphere of the story. Make it feel urgent and emotionally relevant, okay? So like they leave, like in the retention rates, they leave with their clients' relations, okay? So emotional, again, activates different parts of the brain. Show the cost. That's very important for C-level people. Wasted time, lost talent, missed opportunities. Anything that you need. And last but not least, don't solve the problem too soon. Okay, make it sit for a moment. In the punchline, you're going to try to solve the problem to think like you have the solution, you have the idea, you want to incept it somehow. Okay, make it sit for some time. Okay, everything is fine. Okay, so we have, okay, the story. Yes, one, we talked about this, how to create the story. And also we created one story about retention rates. So are you ready now to look at some reports and how we can turn the reports into compelling stories? Yeah, I know it can be difficult, yes, but we sometimes have to present some data, some metrics. And how to do it? Well, the first thing is you need to find the right report that will give you the necessary data, okay? And actually, we can use the same structure. And if you don't have the necessary data to create the story, you can try to find out, okay? Today, we are trying, because we are business language trainers, so we will try to do it with language reports, okay? Shall we? I can promise that they can tell a story too. Okay, so how we can set the scene? This is the scene we can set here. So some time ago, one of our client companies is getting ready for something big, expanding into 2 new international markets. The strategy is sharp, logistics sorted, the product ready to go, and English, well, we're fine. They tell us most of our team is at B2, some at C1 level. We use English every day. Okay, that's fine, clear enough. Okay, so we have the scene here, okay? So just like someone told them B2, C1, okay. This is the metrics that they got. But what happens next? What's the drama here? But then things start to slow down. You can hear, our meetings with new partners don't go smoothly, or our managers avoid speaking up. Emails feel unclear and some updates just don't land. Everyone is officially B2 or higher, but in real life situations, they are stuck. Teams hesitate, projects drag, leaders ask, well, if their level is high, why aren't they performing in English like we expect? Okay, so we had the scene. We have the suspense here, drama, what's going on. Let's move on. The next stage was, do you remember? Involving the audience, okay? So you can say, or I can say today, have you seen this happen in your organization, where people are technically fluent, but in practice, when presenting, persuading, or handling difficult conversations, they hold back? Okay, so like you think, and at the same time, I can establish credibility. Okay, that's exactly why we, Coaction, runs in-depth audits, not just to put a CEFR label on someone, but to understand how they use language in real business contexts. They break it down, like the audits, the reports, okay? This manager's grammar is great, but they struggle to structure arguments, okay? So this is what they need to practice, not grammar, but just like structuring arguments. Another example, this team member avoids writing emails. They are afraid of sounding too direct. So what we need to do, practice language of diplomacy. Or another example, this person understands everything, but freezes during negotiations. Okay, so practice negotiating. That's one area. This report doesn't just say B2, it shows where confidence drops, where clarity is missing, and what skills are blocking progress. So credibility established. Now we need to signal the end of the story. Yes, don't we? So the company listens. They say, okay, let's stop assuming. Let's train people based on what they actually need. So they rebuilt their program. Targeted practice, real scenarios, communication goals aligned with business goals. Okay. And what about the punchline here? 3 months later, things shift. People speak up, emails are clearer, calls with international partners run smoother, projects pick up speed. Because knowing someone's level isn't enough, understanding how they use the language, that's where real progress begins. Okay, so thank you. So this is how we can look at reports. So like not numbers are very important, but also what you discuss, what's behind there, okay? And if you don't have enough details, then just try to find out, ask, okay? Ask questions. And then you can tell the story. You can turn any metric or any spreadsheet into a short story that can influence the audience. And you remember, you need to know the audience to be able to create a story that will influence them. Okay, so we are almost there. So I'm signaling the end. Okay, we talked about storytelling, about retention rates, how to turn them into stories, about reports, how to turn them also into stories. Right now, we are going to look at the language that can help you create influential story. And we are going to look at 5 different techniques, impact techniques, so they are called. Metaphors, contrasting, groups of 3 rhetorical questions, and question tags. Okay? So, because they say devil's in the details, and I cannot agree more. So let's just look at some language structures, like some details that can be used in your stories that can make a huge impact. Okay. First, metaphors. A sentence. Our retention rate dropped slightly last quarter. Perfectly fine. Everything is okay with the sentence. It sounds nice, polite. It's okay, but you can change it. You can change it into a metaphor. So you can say, our retention rate is starting to leak, like a slow puncture we can't afford to ignore. So what's a metaphor? A metaphor, as you can see here, is something that is not directly connected with the topic you're discussing, but you can compare it somehow. Okay, look here. So, okay, our retention rate dropped slightly. Okay, so it decreased a bit. And you can just picture why it's good, why metaphors are good. Again, because the language of metaphors influences the brain and activates different parts of the brain. When you say our retention rate, close your eyes and imagine this. You can see this, okay? You can picture it in your head. Our retention rate is starting to leak, like a slow puncture we can't afford to ignore, okay? You know what happens to a puncture? People can imagine this, so you have to fix it before something worse happens, okay? I definitely encourage you to think about different metaphors that you can use in your stories. In my opinion, metaphors are the most influential, so try to use them. Next, contrasting. That's another powerful technique. So take a look at the sentence. Training participation increased and results were okay. Okay. Contrasting is talking about two or even more things that like are kind of on different or opposite sides. So you can talk about up and down. Okay, something is on the top, something is at the bottom. Something is hot or cold, okay? You can just like add metaphor to it, of course. Or you can talk also about present and future, or past and present. So these are like good and better. This is also like good opposite, good and better, or good and bad, okay? 0, 1. Last, first. You can use different contrasting ideas. The one that we have here is this. Okay. Training participation went up, but without clear goals. Higher attendance doesn't equal better results. Okay, so up, but actually like it doesn't mean that it won't go down. Okay. So it's like a warning in contrast. So think about how you can use contrasting in your stories. You can say, today we are first, but if we don't do anything, we can like be second. Okay, you don't want to say last, but second. Or last year we were second, today we are first. Yeah, that's also something like that, contrasting. Groups of 3, I need to tell you that a lot of famous speakers, presenters, good presenters and speakers use groups of 3. And we can, this is already a group of 3. What it means that usually we try to group things in 3s, okay? So we're looking at cost, efficiency, and engagement. That's already a group of 3, but we can improve it even. So my first suggestion is if you need to present anything, try to choose 3 aspects of it. But you can even do something more with it, okay? You can ask rhetorical question, include group of 3, and add one more even the most important, okay, thing. But this is the example. What do we measure that matters? Cost, speed, efficiency, but above all, employee engagement. So I encourage you to use regular groups of 3, but if you have the possibility and you want to be even more influential, then it's good to start with rhetorical question, answer in a group of 3, and a punchline. We call it also a punchline, but above all, employee engagement. It's a very good idea to do it like that. Shall we move on to the next? I mentioned rhetorical questions already, so we can change any statement that you want to be very powerful and influential into a rhetorical question. So, I'm sorry, we can say some employees aren't engaged. A very good sentence, okay? But you can say, what good are strong metrics if your people are quietly disengaging behind the numbers? So it's, of course, like the language is also here vivid, and we have adverbs, we have more adjectives, yes? Strong metrics, we have quietly disengaging, behind the numbers metaphors. So we can, create rhetorical questions with metaphors contrasting in groups of 3, of course. We can combine all the impact techniques, which I encourage to do, okay? And the last thing, yes, question tags, okay? So how it sounds. We need better internal communication. It's okay, yes, but you can say, we need better internal communication, don't we? And I encourage you to practice question tags on a daily basis. I found them very useful to confirm information, to relate with people, to engage in small talk, to show that you listen actively. So question tags are great. Okay. And one more thing, vivid expressive language. That wasn't mentioned as an impact technique. Yes, because you remember what we had there? Metaphors. Yes, we had metaphors, contrasting. Okay, groups of 3, rhetorical questions and question tags. But I mentioned during the stories that vivid expressive language is like, we can't call it a technique, that's why it wasn't there, but it's something that definitely can help us build a story that will stay and affect people's brain in the way we want it to be affected. And it will help the story stay in people's heads. Okay, so this is as a simple sentence. Some teams are underperforming, but we can say some teams are dragging their feet, not from lack of skill, but from unclear direction and fading motivation. Yes, this is the vivid language. I also mentioned it when we looked at the stories, the retention rate stories and the report stories. The example from the retention rate stories was mingling with people, happened to bump into Susie. So it's good to, again, use this language that will show movement, okay, that will influence this motor part of people's brain. Okay. Okay, we are slowly finishing. I'm signaling right now the end of this webinar. I have already mentioned something about storytelling, how and why. We looked at stages of storytelling. We created 2 different stories, one about retention rates, one about reports. We looked at impact techniques that can be used as details of your stories. And now we are finishing. So do you have any questions right now for me? If you don't have any questions right now, you can drop me an email. I'm going to show you my email address later on. You can say any questions, or you can say, before we wrap up, what's that one question still sitting at the back of your mind? You know, the one that's too small to ask or too big to ignore. What do we have? What kind of impact techniques I have used here? Do you know? Yes. We have contrasting, too small to ask, too big to ignore. Okay. We have like metaphor, sitting at the back of your mind. Okay. We have some kind of a question, rhetorical question, involving the audience. You know. Yeah, that's also involving. So just remember that even any questions can be asked into a like micro story. I hope you learned something today. I tried my best to explain the storytelling to you so that you can use it whenever it's needed. If you remember the agenda well, there was a surprise at the end, yes, of our agenda. So that's the surprise, okay, here. So there's 3 people who will contact Natalia. You can see the details on the screen right now, saying that they have the info from the webinar, will get 3 audits each. And after the audit, we prepare the reports. I told you the story. There is a story in the report, so it's not only B2 or C1. There is a story. What are the strong? This is like an assessment of the skills. What are the strong and to improve areas? Okay, so you can contact Natalia via her email address or phone number. And if you say that you get the info from the webinar about storytelling, then you will get 3 audits. 3 people, 3 audits each. That's the surprise. So that's it for today. I'd like to thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure for me. I'm happy that I could prepare the webinar on storytelling for you. If you have any questions, you can drop me an email. You can see the email on the screen right now. You can find me also on LinkedIn. So thank you. Good luck with your stories. All the best. And hope to see you one day. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.